Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be chapter 27 of this reading. When we neared the base of the mountain, I noticed a little cave entrance that had a 3-story staircase winding up to it, with the cavern being completely rounded out and dug down slightly. We walked into the grotto to notice that it went down about 4 feet, then it leveled out and started to have brightly shining, multicolored crystals and diamonds around the walls and ceiling. As we ventured, I asked, "What is this place?" "This horrid mountain's called Zaec's tomb," John replied. "This cave will lead us to the inner sanctum of the mountain, where the door to where he was incarcerated is hidden. Heard that ever since he was imprisoned, no one has dared enter this place. It was believed that he somehow haunts it just for fun. Even made a couple gods disappear." "Dude was the baddest of the bad, I heard," Sam said. "A mythic god. Could kill anything just by staring at it with his hellish gaze." Sam's feathers then puffed up as she said, "Scares me just thinking about it. However, they're just rumors. No one really knows anything about the 2 great tombs anymore. The gods that were trapped in them were believed to have died over several millions of years ago." I looked over at the gems along the left wall and tried to reach for them with my left hand as I thought, these are awesome. Just as I was to put my left hand on the wall, Nanya quickly grabbed my upper right arm with her left paw and pulled me closer to her as she said, "Don't touch." "Why?" I asked as I looked over at her and lowered my hand. We then stopped walking as she turned to look up at me and replied, "Think of these crystals just as sirens. They lure you into a trap. Once you touch them, it's too late to get away. The only way to get out of the trap is to recite an ancient incantation that only Zaec knows." "How do you know?" Nanya just gave me an irritated expression for a few seconds and asked, "You're kidding, right?" I slowly shook my head to answer her. Then she sighed as she looked down at the floor and said, "By the creator, read a damn book once in a while, Zaec. It won't kill ya." "I hate books." Nanya turned to continue heading through the cave, pulling me along by my right arm with her left paw. Thinking we were nearing the end, I noticed 2 black wooden doors far ahead of us. They had large golden energy-like markings that would slowly flash randomly around them, emitting a weird eerie sound coming from each of the markings every time they flashed. As we got closer to the doors, we could hear moaning coming from all around us, while at the same time, the cave started to get darker. However, John gave a loud chirp, and a row of torches lit up along the wall leading down to the doors, making the gems on the walls disappear. But as we got even closer, the illumination from the torchlights began to dim no matter how high or how hot they flared. I looked over at Nanya and asked, "Other than to obtain Rokar, what are we here for exactly?" "Because of John's and Koros' stupidity, we have to go through a series of trials in order to unlock a special door that can't be opened unless we get a piece of the key to it from the 2 tombs." She moved my right arm to have my hand back behind her waistline again, as she said, "And, of course, by we, I mean you." She then let go of my wrist and said, "Now scratch, and go a little bit lower." But I thought, "Your thoughts are dumb, now scratch." When we finally reached the doorway, which was about 20 feet tall and 7 feet wide for each door, the light shining from the flames had gone down to that of a dim bulb. The moaning stopped, but a cold and creepy gust of wind started to blow. At the same time, the markings on the doors flashed a couple more times before flashing all at once, and they completely vanished and didn't reappear again. I moved my right hand away from Nanya and said, "Keep your guard up." John's feathers puffed up as he chirped, then asked, "What is it, dog?" "I'm sensing something vile behind this door." Sam's feathers puffed up as well, then said, I don't know what you mean by that, but I can feel something evil flowing through my feathers. She started moving her beak to try and brush her feathers down, but it didn't work. When she figured that out, she looked over at me and said, "I can't get my feathers down." "Ray," Nanya calmly called out, "me, John, and Sam will head back outside and wait for you. You'll have to go at it alone from here." And as a hint that I got from one of the books that I read about Sir Rickon's tomb, that which is not worth anything is worth of great importance. But that's all I've got for you. You'll have to figure out everything else. "Thanks," I said, irritated. A loud roar boomed through the cavern at that point, then a few seconds later it faded out. Shortly after that, Sam said, "Okay, I'm out. Let's go, John. I want to get the fuck out of here." John quickly flew off my head and landed on Nanye's left shoulder. Then the Ibeki turned back towards the entrance of the cave as she said, "Don't take too long, my lord. Okay?" As she started to walk away, she said, "I still want to play with you." I watched the three to assure their safety out of the cave. Then I turned back to the doorway, where another loud roar boomed. Along with that, a cold wind blew by, blowing out the flames along the walls and bringing the grotto into total darkness. Markings on the doors then shined brightly again, just barely enough to light up the area. Afterwards, a large voice said, "So, you have finally come." The voice then raised itself and said, "Present the mark of that which bears the dark." I looked at the doorway, confused, then my arm started to feel as though it was burning immensely. On its own, my right arm stretched out to the doors, then turned to bend upwards with the back of my fist aimed to the markings. I had no strength in my right arm to pull it away, so I tried grabbing it by the forearm with my left hand to help pull it back to my side. I was able to lower my right arm just a bit, but the pain only increased. Standing there struggling to hold myself back, I asked, "What the hell did Eyeless do?" The markings changed to have only the ones around the edges of the doorway shine. Then the voice said, "You may pass to claim what waits, but even as the Endelment, Abyss shall house your fate." The pain slowly faded to almost nothing as the markings disappeared from the doors, while they opened away from me with a loud creaking sound. Once opened, the voice said, "Enter at your own risk." I looked past the doorway to only see darkness, unsure of what could come of me proceeding. However, I didn't have a choice really to not go. I removed my left hand from my right arm and tried to channel my aura to have it light up the area around me, but I had forgotten that my powers had been stripped from me in the cave. So, of course, nothing happened. When I remembered about that, I said, "Damn it. Just gonna have to go off on instinct then." Just as I walked through, the door slammed shut behind me. The mountain rumbled as a huge lake of magma quickly rose up from the floor to just a foot from the walkway that I stood on, lighting up the place quite a bit. The walkway was 4 feet wide and spiraled up to another large set of black doors, which was in the center of the mountain. The doors had the same random golden markings around them as the first ones did, but every time the markings would disappear, some black smoke would rise from the area and dissipate into the air. However, the doors didn't look like they opened out to anything, just stood up at the end of the walkway in the center of the mountain. I started to tread the path up towards the second doorway, while doing the bad habit of speaking to myself and said, "Something's wrong with my arm. It hurts so bad." After I walked about a quarter of the way up towards the second set of doors, the mountain rumbled again. Shortly afterwards, 2 thin stalagmites quickly spiked up about 12 feet high, one at each edge of the walkway directly across from each other. I stopped about 3 feet away to see them both form one green translucent wall of energy in between each other. Then I heard a loud electric sound for a few seconds before the same voice from the first doorway spoke again. "Before you can proceed, you must service my every need." 3 more sets of spikes struck up along the walkway to make more walls of energy, each a different color. Oddly enough, after the voice spoke, it didn't continue with what it wanted. So, as I stared up at the wall of energy, I asked, "What is it?" The voice didn't respond. Then after a moment I yelled, "What is it that you want?" I glanced down at my arm, angry yet unable to do anything about it, where I waited for about a minute in silence. As I did, my right arm's pain grew even more to where I couldn't keep myself from holding it still, making me constantly clench and release my grip. I looked over at my right arm to see the scars starting to slightly wave from side to side, with my blood seeping from the top ends of them. In severe pain, I said, "The pain in my arm won't stop, and it just keeps getting worse." Just then, my right arm on its own swung up to aim my palm out towards the wall and stretched my fingers apart. The wall of energy flashed for a second. Then the deeper voice said, "Complete the task that you are given, and you may proceed onwards with your mission." It then spoke louder as the wall turned translucent black and said, "Fighting angry, tough, and bold is worth a handful of gold, but fighting peaceful, valiant, and true is worth far more than even you." The wall opened from its center outward to reveal an area that was completely black, with dark smoke slightly blowing out from the open area. A whole other dimension of some kind. My right arm dropped to my side, and the pain from it was once again slightly relieved from me. Then I motioned to head through the doorway. I didn't know what was waiting for me, but I needed to settle things quickly so I could return to Serena. I hoped she was okay. I entered through, only to hear the door somehow slam shut on me. Then a dim light lit up from underneath me to reveal a strange area. An endless place with different sizes and shapes of tombstones around the outer rim of it, which were very far off into the distance from where I stood. It also had the entire floor covered in a 2-inch thick puddle of blood. There was also a foul stench of both the blood and decomposition in the air. I wasn't too affected by the smell, but it was annoying. As I glanced around, I asked, "Where am I?" "You're in the very mind of his wickedness," a dark yet familiar voice responded. "The land of the forgotten or unworthy fallen warriors." I then turned around to where the voice was coming from, as it said, "The ultimate being of true darkness, Zaec Alanu, ruler of Abyss." The person I saw was none other than my father, King Dominic Halen Shero. He gave a blank expression, just like how JJ would stare. However, Father didn't seem like himself. I couldn't sense his energy level at all, and he didn't announce me by any of my titles. But he looked just like him. It was a bit strange. Father was light-skinned, just like me, and had emerald eyes that shined so bright that you could actually see them in a pitch-black room. The very same eye color I saw in my daydream. His black hair only hung down to his shoulders, but was also styled into a ponytail like mine, with the 2 strands hanging at the right side of his face, reaching just under his eye. Father also had facial hair that he styled into a small connecting mustache and goatee, with a slight bit of sideburns. He was just a foot taller than me, and the thing that really stood out about him only because he liked to look this way, was how he made his body look very muscular. Of course, anybody from Wavryn can make their bodies look the way they want to, but Father and his idiocy took it to a personal level. He made it seem as though he was tough, when he was really just showing off. Complete dumbass. He wore black pants with a black leather belt around it, and the ankles tucked in his tightly tied black boots. He also wore small black weightlifting gloves like mine, but only the thumb, index, and middle fingers were covered from the glove, leaving the other two exposed. The gloves were made to help him channel energy into those specific parts of his hand without much effort or waste of energy, thus allowing him to use his powers more efficiently. He never wore anything on or above his torso other than a black trench coat that looked similar to my own, slightly newer than mine. He did that mainly because he wanted to prove his strength just by showing it off, not by actually using it. Once again, a complete dumbass. Just as I turned around to face him, Father said, "You'll never beat me." I smirked at the man and asked, "Wanna bet?" Immediately, he jolted towards me as he pulled back his right fist, swinging it at my face. I quickly stepped my right foot back to brace myself to block the attack with my left hand, as if it was a real punch from him. However, it was weaker than what it should have been. Father swung his left fist to try and strike my stomach, but I simply blocked him by grabbing his fist with my right hand, holding us in a deadlock. It hurt like hell when I had to stop the second attack with my right hand, but I just tolerated the pain and continued to push back. Bracing against each other, we looked straight into one another's eyes, while Father, without any frustration, said, "You'll never beat me, Endelment. You're too weak." "Shut your mouth, deminion." He chuckled at that as he gave a slight smile, then said, "Is that who you think I am?" He then grinned as he continued, "You think that you can fight without the use of your own strength, that using someone else's powers will help you progress in your own. However." Father quickly moved both of his hands to grab my wrists, then pulled me forward and struck me in my stomach with his left knee, stunning me a bit. He let go and kicked me in the face with his right foot, forcing me to step back a few feet. Afterwards, he continued, "That is complete and utter bullcrap. You can't even hope to win any of your fights without using your own strength." I wiped some of my blood away from under my nose as he said, "I've been watching you, Shero." With that, I looked up at my father in great confusion. I knew that he would only call me by three things: my middle name when he was very angry, his son when he was happy, or his prince when he was calm. Never just by my first and last name. Anything other than those three titles proved that something was wrong. As I stood myself up straight, knowing that Father wasn't really himself, another voice to my left said, "You've been hiding yourself from yourself, Endelment." I looked to my left to see a man of true legend, who once defeated the darkness all on his own. Callius Shero. He looked just like Father, but his hair was white and his eyes were black, but his pupils were white as well. He wore white pants with a thick gold chain belt around it, and a black muscle shirt and black combat boots. Callius didn't wear training gloves, and no one understood why. But then again, he was the one that conquered darkness all by himself. Why need proof? When I looked over at Callius, he said, "And as long as you do, your world, your life, will fall into dismay. Everything you know will perish, Endelment," a third voice said from my right. I quickly turned to see another man the same size as me, with the same look as my own, clothes and all. However, his hair and eye color were Peruvian blue. It was easy for me to remember who this man was. He was the man that I truly looked up to. A real hero, because he was the only man that I knew who could actually fight fair and defeat over 100,000 other warriors that stood against him all on his own. There were also times when he would call forth an ancient and powerful creature to his side for assistance, and this man was the only one that was able to do so in his time. That creature was none other than Hegu, and he was fierce when he stood by this man's side to fight. This man, the one I looked up to so much, was Jijiku Shero, my grandfather, or grandpa, as I called him. Jijiku was the first to use revolving pistols in his fights, having never even come close to wasting his energy while doing so. He placed one at his left side waist, with the handle facing forward and the pistol angled slightly up in its holster. The other was placed at his upper back on his left side within his dark gray trench coat, which had a blood-red interior and blood-red seams. It was also strange to me that Grandpa didn't call me by what he had labeled me when he lived. He always called me Ray, from part of my middle name, no matter what was going on. I kind of liked that. When I looked over at Grandpa, I got a little surprised while he said, "Prove yourself, Endelment. Use it. Use your strength, your true powers. Unlock what you wish to hide deep within you." Fed up with being called something I was not in any shape or form, I angrily roared as I forced my energy to change myself into Zaec. Yet with my change, my right arm's pain grew immensely, and my blood started to seep even more from each scar, dripping down from my entire right arm. Callius started to chuckle for a bit, then he raised it to a laugh for a few seconds as he held his stomach with both of his hands and tilted his head back slightly. He moved his head to look over at me again afterwards and said, "You must be joking. Surely you don't think that that pathetic excuse for a transformation of power can beat any one of us." Callius, Jijiku, and Father all changed into their unique dark forms at the same time, just like my elder brother's form. Their aura spiked up and flared out slightly, then each had a dramatic change in their appearance. Callius's entire left arm formed black scales around it, and his nails grew into long claws, while his elbow grew a half a foot long black bone-like spike. Jijiku's right and left hand, along with his forearms, formed scales around them, and his claws grew out to be about an inch long. Father just grew a large spike on each of his joints around his upper body, which came out from the outer sides. All three of them had their eyes sharpened like snakes, and the outer sides turned black as their pupils changed to the color of their normal eyes, with their bodies growing about 4 more inches. When I saw Father's form, I remembered my past daydream again. It was him. Father. He was the one in my nightmare. However, I wasn't about to let him get away. I wasn't going to let him even try, be him real or fake. Once the three of them changed, Grandpa said in a vicious tone, "Get real, kid. You'll have to do better than that." I jolted towards Father and struck him as hard as I could into his stomach with my right fist. Then as I stared down at the floor, I said, "I just did." The three of them laughed. Then I motioned back slightly to find Father was unaffected by my attack, as he said, "What a shame." The three used Dark Vanish to jolt over and simultaneously punch me with their right fists. Somehow, my Illume powers didn't work in this dimension. I think they even limited my mobility. As the three continued to push their fists into me, Father said, "Nothing but darkness can wander through Abyss freely. And since you no longer have Shadow with you, you can't use your darkness form. The three of them started to rapidly strike me for a few seconds. Then all three struck me with their left foot into my stomach at once. With that, Father said, "These three men obtained their powers from an even higher being. His wickedness, Surfric Alanu, ruler of Abyss, the true king of darkness." The three of them lowered their feet as I held my stomach with both of my hands, very much in pain. I took a couple steps back as Grandpa chuckled a bit, then said, "Pathetic. You may have figured out how your own powers work, but you haven't figured out how to use them in their fullest extent. Talk about weak. Now let us show you what true dark powers are like, kid." The three of them rapidly attacked me again with their fists and feet, far stronger and faster than I could fight. After a few seconds, the three of them struck me in my stomach once more with one of their knees, then jumped back to watch me hold my stomach again with both of my arms as I leaned forward in pain. I stood up after a while and clenched my fists tight. However, before I could move to strike either one of them, Callius jolted over to me and struck the center of my face with his left fist, shattering my glasses. At the same time, Grandpa jolted over to kick me in my back with his left foot, halting me from going anywhere between the two. Afterwards, they jumped away from me and waited as Father calmly walked over. When Father neared, he grabbed my upper right arm with his left hand and clenched his hand tight enough to dig his claws deep into me. He was somehow able to remove me from my illumined form, as the scars I had slowly stretched throughout my body, causing even more pain. Father looked at me with a very hateful expression and said, "Shadows and light's powers mean nothing, for their darkness and illume can never reach the depth and magnitude of that which I contain." I could feel the scars stretching across my upper torso and to my left arm as Callius said, "You may be able to use their abilities without much effort from your emotions and powers, but that just means it's not that much of a change or increase in power. However," Grandpa added, "there's a catch to using my true powers in this realm. You must infuse your own into it in order for it to work. And as the so-called Endelment, that shouldn't be too much of a problem for you." Father removed his hand from me as he took a few steps back, where he, Callius, and Grandpa just stood about 12 feet from me. They charged a mild amount of dark energy into their right hands, while Callius said, "Come on, kid. I want to see what you got. Show me how your true powers work." The pain that I felt from the scars, which had grown all around my arms and completely around my upper torso, was so bad that my energy and strength were nearly drained. I couldn't do anything to try and fight back anymore. I couldn't even stand. I just fell onto my knees. I could only try to hold my ground as much as I could, while trying to channel as much of my energy into my right hand. The three standing around raised their right hands to aim for their shot at me, charging even more energy into their blasts. They had gathered so much power that I could even feel the massive heat coming from each one, collecting a lethal amount between the three. However, all three were confused for a moment when they sensed something strange. My entire body pulsated as my energy began to rise within, but I couldn't control it. It did that twice. Then the scars that had grown all throughout my body gave me so much pain that I couldn't breathe, move, or even think. The scars were nearly pouring blood and were flaring black smoke from them, still waving around slightly. There was no denying it. The pain was so strong that it was completely unbearable. I was in so much pain that my face was frozen in anger, my eyes were tearing. It wasn't normal tears. It was blood. My body was tense to the point that I couldn't move myself the slightest bit, and the scars pulsating wasn't helping at all. As I knelt down, I thought, no, I'm not going to die like this. Not here. I'm not going to lose. Severely in pain, I looked up at Father as he slowly said, "Die." I was able to raise my right fist up, using all of my anger and hatred towards Father, while looking down at the ground, shouted, "I'm not going to lose!" Just as the three of them shot their energy blasts at me, I slammed my fist into the blood-soaked ground. Even to my surprise, just as their attacks reached me, 3 spikes from Dark Rise jolted up and pierced each blast to dissolve it into nothing. The 3 spikes then reverted back into the ground as my body changed into something vile. My shins and forearms grew out 3 black bone-like spikes, each 1.5 inches thick and 4 inches long, that curled up slightly, with the spikes on my forearms at the outer edges. My upper arms grew out 2 spikes that were the same, with a spike that was slightly longer than the others that grew out from my elbows and knees. Each of my knuckles had a small spike on them, and my claws grew out to be about 1 inch long, with 2 inch long and thick spikes on the top sides of my wrists. My shoulders also grew spikes on them that were 3 inches thick and about 5 inches long that angled out straight. I also had 2 spikes on my neck that grew out opposite each other from the right and left sides, which were just 1.5 inches big. My head grew out 2 horns from the back that curled up and over the sides of it, while they pointed straight out 1/2 foot past my forehead, both 3 inches thick. Last were 6 very large spikes that grew out from my spine and formed together into 2 feathered wings, both somehow bright white, with inch-long spikes at each joint. My body itself didn't grow like everyone else's did, but my eyes went pitch black, with just my pupils glowing blood red and dilating like snake eyes. My tongue formed into that of a snake's, along with all of my teeth changing into sharp black fangs. My hair went completely black again, but had that same shine that made it look red at an angle, with black smoke rising from it slightly. After my body had changed, I slowly stood up and looked at Father with great anger, while I spoke with a very vicious tone that was completely enraged, and said, "I'm not going to lose to you, Halen." This concludes the reading of Chapter 27. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. With that being said, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 28.